Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaya Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayantidiyat Nashtaprayesha Vadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtike. So continuing with the discussion on Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Lila, first chapter, the Spiritual Masters, text number 55 onwards. So this is Chatushloki Bhagavatam that Krishna's Kaviraj Goswami has quoted here. So this is the third verse of Chatushloki. Yata mahanti bhutani bhutescha vacheshvanu pravishtani apravishtani tatha teshu nateshu aham. As the material elements enter the bodies of all living beings and yet remain outside them all, I exist within all material creations and yet am not within them. The gross material elements, earth, water, fire, air, and ether, combine with the subtle material elements, mind, intelligence, and false ego, to construct the bodies of this material world. And yet they are beyond these bodies as well. Any material construction is nothing but an amalgamation or combination of material elements in varied proportions. So different bodies have different proportions of these elements only. There's nothing extra, nothing new in this. These elements exist both within and beyond the body. For example, although the sky exists in space, it also enters within the body. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, who is the cause of the material energy, lives within the material world as well as beyond it. So he lives within the material world as well as beyond it. It's not like he is only in Golok Vrindavan and he's not here. He's everywhere. Without his presence within the material world, the cosmic body could not develop. Just as without the presence of the spirit within the physical body, the body could not develop. The cosmic body or the universal form, it cannot develop. Because the soul itself, although it is part and parcel of Krishna, although it is very powerful, but without the presence of Paramatma, it cannot do anything. The entire material manifestation develops and exists because the Supreme Personality of Godhead enters it as Paramatma or the Super Soul. The personality of Godhead in his all-pervading feature of Paramatma enters every entity from the biggest to the minute. His existence can be realized by one who has a single qualification of submissiveness and who thereby becomes a surrendered soul. So his existence can be realized by one who has single qualification of submissiveness and who thereby becomes a surrendered soul. The development of submissiveness is a cause of proportionate spiritual realization. Proportionate. Ye yatha mam prapadyante, Krishna says. As one surrenders unto me, I reveal to him accordingly. By which one can ultimately meet the Supreme Lord in person as a man meets another man face to face. So nothing lacking in the Supreme Lord, nothing lacking in the process. It's only our submissiveness or our surrender where the lack is. Because of his development of transcendental attachment for the Supreme Lord, a surrendered soul feels the presence of his beloved everywhere, and all his senses are engaged in the loving service of the Lord. His eyes are engaged in seeing the beautiful couple, Shri Radha and Krishna, sitting on a decorated throne beneath a desired tree in the transcendental land of Vrindavan. His nose is engaged in smelling the special aroma of the lotus feet of the Lord. Similarly, his ears are engaged in hearing messages from Vaikuntha, and his hands embrace the lotus feet of the Lord and his associates. Thus, the Lord is manifested to a pure devotee from within and without. This is one of the mysteries of devotional relationship in which a devotee and the Lord are bound by a tie of spontaneous love. Now, to achieve this love should be the goal of life for every living being. So this is the mystery. Engaging everything in the service of the Lord and then surrendering oneself completely to the service of the Lord. Then one can see, as Prabhupada says, he can see the beautiful couple of Sri Radha and Krishna sitting on a decorated throne beneath a desired tree in transcendental land of Vrindavan. That's actually the pranam mantra for Radha Govindji. So Krishna is within and Krishna is without. He's everywhere. All we have to do is surrender, and then he will give us the eyes, the divine eyes, to see him everywhere. So 56th verse. Etavadeva jigyasyam tattva jigyasanatmana anvaya vyatirekabhyam yat syat sarvatra sarvadha. A person interested in transcendental knowledge must therefore always directly and indirectly inquire about it to know the all-pervading truth. A person interested in transcendental knowledge must therefore always inquire directly and indirectly. Let's see what Prabhupada says. Those who are serious about the knowledge of the transcendental world, which is far beyond the material cosmic creation, must approach a bona fide spiritual master to learn the science both directly and indirectly. One must learn both the means to approach the desired destination and the hindrances to such progress. The spiritual master knows how to regulate the habits of a neophyte disciple, and therefore a serious student must learn the science in all its aspects from him. So spiritual master knows how to regulate the habits of a neophyte disciple. And this is what Prabhupada did with his disciples, with his followers. He would motivate them, inspire them, even to do with seeming like impossible things. But he would motivate them to such an extent. And by his own dealing with his disciples, they were just ready to give everything to serve him in every way possible. It wasn't just like because he's a pure devotee, they were ready to serve. Because of his dealings with them, with the way he lovingly reciprocated or took care of them. He didn't have money. Prabhupada didn't have money at all. So it wasn't like he was giving them lots of money. No. He was giving them lots and lots of affection. And they understood he is our real well-wisher. Many disciples, towards the end of Prabhupada's pastimes, we can say that, Prabhupada being such a pure devotee, because pastimes is only for Krishna. But for a pure devotee, we can also say that. So towards the end, Prabhupada was initiating his disciples through letters. It means he was asking his senior disciples to do the initiation on his behalf. And many of the disciples, they didn't even see Prabhupada. They just got initiated by letter. But still they had full faith in Prabhupada. They got so attached to Prabhupada. This is really mysterious. And this is how Prabhupada made them do things which normally would be impossible. Just like in 1966, Prabhupada established ISKCON, registered ISKCON society. He didn't have any disciples then, he had just a few followers and made them trustees also. So many things went on. So that was in 1966. We didn't even have our own Bhagavad Gita, what to speak of other books. And Prabhupada would give lectures based on Dr. Radhakrishnan, the former president of India, his edition of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada said his translations are okay, his commentaries are not. So Prabhupada would give lectures through that. So how much his disciples would have learned. But in 1967, he sent 3 couples with the little daughter, Saraswati, 2-year-old daughter, to go to London and preach. And what did ISKCON had at that time? In New York, in San Francisco, little place that they had rented, and in Montreal, Canada. That's all. No books. No books of ISKCON itself. Or maybe one small book they had published, Easy Journey to the Planet, or something like that. That's all they had. And Prabhupada sent them to London. You go open London, open United Kingdom, preach. And these 3 disciples, they came, they just had full faith in Prabhupada, without any money. They didn't have money. They were somehow surviving over there. They were living inside the carton boxes. That's what they say. With the little daughter, Saraswati also. 3 ladies, 3 men. And somehow they came in contact with Beatles, George Harrison. And through Beatles, we only heard of how the Hare Krishna Mahamantra got so famous all over the world. It was #1 album. And George Harrison was singing and he was giving money. And this is how Prabhupada inspired other disciples in USA, in Canada, and then Europe and other places, slowly, slowly, slowly. So this is an expert spiritual master. And therefore a serious student must learn the science in all its aspects from him. There are different grades and standards of prosperity. The standard of comfort and happiness conceived by a common man engaged in material labor is the lowest grade of happiness, for it is in relationship with the body. The highest standard of such bodily comfort is achieved by a fruitive worker who by pious activities reaches the plane of heaven or the kingdom of the creative gods with their delegated powers. But the conception of comfortable life in heaven is insignificant in comparison to the happiness enjoyed in the impersonal Brahman and Brahmananda. The spiritual bliss derived from impersonal Brahman is like the water in the hoof print of a calf compared to the ocean of love of Godhead. So when one develops pure love of the Lord, he derives an ocean of transcendental happiness from the association of the personality of Godhead. To qualify oneself to reach this stage of life is the highest perfection. So why Prabhupada is saying this? Because that's how the shloka is. He must therefore always directly and indirectly inquire about it, about the transcendental knowledge, to know the all-pervading truth. So this is from lowest level of happiness of a man. Of course, the animals, they even have lower level. to the topmost level of perfection, attaining ocean of transcendental happiness from the association of the personality of Godhead. So this is what one should inquire. One should try to purchase a ticket to go back home, back to Godhead. The price of such a ticket is one's intense desire for it, which is not easily awakened, even if one continuously performs pious activities for thousands of lives. So one should try to purchase a ticket, to go back home, back to Godhead. And what's the price? Lolium, intense desire. Yes, I want to do this. All mundane relationships are sure to be broken in the course of time, but once one establishes a relationship with the personality of Godhead in a particular rasa, it is never to be broken, even after the annihilation of the material world. In fact, the relationship doesn't break, it just becomes stronger and stronger. One should understand through the transparent medium of the spiritual master that the Supreme Lord exists everywhere in his transcendental spiritual nature, and the living entities' relationships with the Lord are directly and indirectly existing everywhere, even in this material world. So the relationships existing everywhere. In the spiritual world, there are 5 kinds of relationships with the Supreme Lord: Shanta, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhurya. The perverted reflections of these rasas are found in the material world. Land, home, furniture, and other inert material objects are related in Shantras, or the neutral and silent sense, whereas servants work in the Dasya relationship. The reciprocation between friends is called Sakya. The affection of a parent for a child is known as Vatsalya, and the affairs of conjugal love constitute Madhurya. These 5 relationships in the material world are distorted reflections of the original pure sentiments, which should be understood and perfected in relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. In the material world, the perverted rasas bring frustration, because none of these rasas are perfect. There are expectations, and then there are fights. Expectations are never completely fulfilled. So fights could be between master and servant, always happens. Friends and friends, parents and children, happens between husband, wife, or man and girlfriend. It always happens. So many problems. If these rasas are re-established with Lord Krishna, the result is eternal, blissful life. The only thing is we have to establish these rasas with Krishna, not with anybody here. Here, it will always end in frustration, because even if throughout our life we didn't have problem with, suppose, husband and wife, but one of them is going to die. So somebody is going to leave. But if a relationship is established with Krishna, it will always remain. From this and the preceding 3 verses of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which have been selected from Srimad Bhagavatam, the missionary activities of Lord Chaitanya can be understood. Srimad Bhagavatam has 18,000 verses, which are summarized in the 4 verses, beginning with Aham Eva Sameva Agare, 53rd verse, and concluding with Sriyat Syat Sarvatra Sarvada. In the first of these verses, 53, the transcendental nature of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is explained. The second verse, 54, further explains that the Lord is detached from the workings of the material energy, Maya. The living entities, although part and parcels of Lord Krishna, are prone to be controlled by the external energy. Therefore, although they are spiritual in the material world, they are encased in the bodies of material energy. The eternal relationship of the living entities with the Supreme Lord is explained in that verse. The next verse, 55, instructs that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his inconceivable energies, is simultaneously one with and different from the living entities and the material energy. This knowledge is called Achintya Bhedabhed Tattva. When an individual living entity surrenders to the Supreme Lord, Krishna, he can then develop natural transcendental love for him. This surrendering process should be the primary concern of a human being. In the next verse, 56, it is said that a conditioned soul must ultimately approach a bona fide spiritual master and try to understand perfectly material and spiritual worlds and his own existential position. Here the words Anvevyati Rekabhya, directly and indirectly, suggest that one must learn the process of devotion service in its two aspects. One must directly execute the process of devotion service and indirectly avoid the impediments to progress. And then one can make progress continuously. So that's why these 4 verses are called Chatushloki, an essence of Bhagavad. And then Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, now he quotes words from writing of Bil Mangal Thakur. Chintamanira Jayati Somagirira Gururme Shiksha Guruscha Bhagavan Sikhi Pincha Mauli Yatapada Kalpataru Pallava Shekhareshu Lila Swayamvara Rasam Labhate Jayashri. All glories to Chintamani and my initiating spiritual master, Somagiri. All glories to my instructing spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who wears peacock feathers in his crown, under the shade of his lotus feet, which are like desired trees. Jayashri, or Jayashri means Radharani, enjoys a transcendental mellow of an eternal concert. This verse is from the Krishna Karnamrita, which was written by a great Vaishnava sannyasi named Bil Mangal Thakur, who is also known as Lila Shuka. He intensely desired to enter into the eternal pastimes of the Lord, and he lived at Vrindavan for 700 years in the vicinity of Brahmakunda, a still existing bathing tank in Vrindavan. So I guess we have to take a trip to Brahmakunda also. The history of Bilmangal Thakur is given in a book called Shri Vallabh Digvijay. He appeared in the 18th century of the Shaka era in the province of Dravid and was a chief disciple of Vishnu Swami. In the list of temples and monasteries kept in Shankaracharya's monastery in Dwarka, Bilmangal is mentioned as the founder of Dwarkadhish temple there. Oh, okay. He entrusted the service of his deity to Hari Brahmachari, a disciple of Vallabh Bhatt. Vallabh Bhatt. So these were because it is he was a chief disciple of Vishnu Swami. So this Vallabh Bhatt actually was later known as Vallabhacharya. Bilmangal Thakur actually entered into the transcendental pastimes of Lord Krishna. He has recorded his transcendental experiences and appreciation in the book known as Krishna Karnamrita. In the beginning of that book, he has offered his obeisances to his different gurus, and it is to be noted that he has adored them all equally. The first spiritual master mentioned is Chintamani, who was one of his instructing spiritual masters, because she first showed him the spiritual path. Chintamani was a prostitute with whom Belumangal was intimate earlier in his life. She gave him the inspiration to begin on the path of devotion service, and because she convinced him to give up material existence to try for perfection by loving Krishna, he has first offered his respects to her. Next, he offers his respects to his initiating spiritual master Somagiri, and then to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was also his instructing spiritual master. He explicitly mentions Bhagavan, who has peacock feathers on his crown, because the Lord of Vrindavan, Krishna, the cowherd boy, used to come to Bilmangal to talk with him and supply him with milk. So can you imagine Krishna himself coming every day to Bilmangal and give him milk? In his adoration of Shri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, he states that Jayashri, the goddess of fortune, Srimati Radharani, takes shelter in the shade of his lotus feet to enjoy the transcendental rasa of nuptial love. The complete treatise Krishna Karunamrita, is dedicated to the transcendental pastimes of Shri Krishna and Srimati Radharani. So Prabhupada now giving a warning. It's a book to be read and understood by the most elevated devotees of Shri Krishna, because we can misunderstand the pastimes, because it's completely dedicated to transcendental pastimes of Radha and Krishna. And since we are not at that level to understand, to appreciate those pastimes, we can start thinking that these are just pastimes between young boy and a girl. So better we get purified first. But all these books are available, even online they are available. You can go to Vrindavan, Loi Bazaar, they are available. But as Prabhupada said, don't read them. So for us, Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Nectar of Devotion, that's good enough. If we can understand, especially Nectar of Instructions, starts from Vacha Vegam, it takes us all the way to Radhakund, but starts with Vacha Vegam. So anyway, I guess we can stop here. See anybody have any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, Chaitanya Charitamrita, is it mostly this is on the topic of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or and all the godly sages, or I would call Sant? Sorry, Prabhuji.
It's only about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Only and only. Okay.
Other, like Mahaprabhu's associates, some of them are mentioned, but not in detail. Not in detail.
Prabhuji,
And there is also a movie also on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Very beautiful. I mean, the entire story of his childhood pastimes, when he left his home. So I saw that movie. It's on YouTube also.
Yeah,
Anybody
it's
can watch it.
Nimai of Nadia. That's movie
Yes,
it's
yes,
called.
exactly.
It's not exactly according to the scriptures, but it contains lots of stuff. But some of the pastimes are not correctly presented. But yes, most of it is correct.
Yeah. Yeah, over to you, Mataji. Thank you. Thank you.
Prabhuji, Bilmangal Thakur has a bhajans also, na, I believe?
Krishna Karunamrita is basically some bhajans and some shlokas.
Achha.
Prabhuji, Chaurashtikam is written by him only, right? Bilmangal Thakur.
Which one?
Chaurashtikam.
Chaurashtikam written by Bilmangal Thakur?
No.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Okay.
She's right.
Prabhuji, I remember you narrating that story.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I just checked it. Composer Bill Mangal. I mean, he has written wonderful books, but the thing is how much we can access or we should access.
How much we can absorb.
Yeah, that's a problem. We cannot imitate. Chalo, so you have a safe and wonderful day. Hare Krishna. Jai Shri Ram.
Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Prabhuji.
Krishna.